Sarah, if you can introduce yourself and your role with your organization, that'd be great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Nathan, newish leader to the Middletown Community Foundation.
Sharon?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Sharon Howard. I'm the Director of Hospital Site Communication for Premier Health. Atrium Medical Center is one of our hospitals, and my team member who works out of Atrium is on medical leave, so I'm covering for her.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Megan?
Good afternoon. This is Megan Selnick. I oversee government and community relations for Cleveland Cliffs based out of Middletown.
Thank you. And Mayor Condrey?
Hey guys, I'm Nicole Condrey. I'm the mayor in Middletown, and that's my role. I'm happy to be here and happy to hear.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for your time. For those who haven't, has anyone on the call experienced this presentation or were connected to some of the earlier conversations? Rick, do you know?
I don't think so. I think it's a new group.
Appreciate your time. I'm based in Detroit. I am a digital media entrepreneur. We have found in our experience, it's helpful to kind of take people through, the way we think and how that shapes some of the work we do. That tends to lead to a pretty robust conversation about what's happening in places like Middletown. So I'm going to move quickly through our presentation deck and hopefully have some time left for conversation, being respectful of folks' time. That's me. This is a picture of me. I am in the middle doing the yoga stand. That is my brother Jimmy, my cornhole partner. We are sitting behind the old Union train station that has recently been purchased by Ford Motor Company and is, after billions and billions of dollars of investment, is going to serve as its global talent innovation hub related to all things electric. This story is kind of important to me because it was a seminal moment in the founding DNA of Issue Media Group. This picture was taken at a time when Detroit was in bankruptcy, the mayor was in jail, the auto sector was imploding. My brother and I, who were very connected to the arts and culture and music scene, got caught up in this crazy event called Cornhole. And we asked a bunch of artists to make boards, and we got word out. This was pre-social media to people wondering what would happen, and 300 people showed up to play cornhole. I still call it the largest cornhole event in the history of the world. This event was super important to me because I was inspired by the narrative. Here was a community of people that were largely connected to what I call the kind of the grassroots place-based transformation of the city of Detroit. And the narrative on that day was, oh my God, where else can you do this but Detroit? And I realized that this community was going to be fundamental in starting to reverse talent migration patterns in the city. And I proved to be correct. The next day I got on a plane, I was sitting next to a person and they asked me where I lived, and I said I live in Detroit. And they go, well, where do you live? Like in Birmingham or Pontiac? Their assumption was nobody lives in Detroit. And I let them know I lived in the University District neighborhood of Detroit. I was raising children, and they thought I was crazy and committing child abuse. And I was very struck by the importance of informed and engaged as a mechanism to impact how people feel about a place. Folks that are reading the daily newspaper at the time, I think it was kind of committed to reporting on the decline of the city on a daily basis, compared to the community of people that I was connected to that were a part of what was happening in the city. I was incredibly struck by the difference in how they felt about the city and how they talked about the city. My question to myself on that day was, my God, what if you had a group of reporters reporting on this small scale change of how the city was happening? Could you provide a more kind of appropriate view of what was going on in Detroit and a more balanced sense of what was happening in the city? So we started a media company with a really unique mission. Our mission is to engage stakeholders that are really attached to place and help support the kind of coverage and news and information that is rapidly disappearing in local media as a mechanism to increase attachment to place and reattach civic infrastructure, largely in older industrial Midwestern cities. This is our current footprint of sites. I'd like to tell you it was strategic, but we tend to be invited into places by economic developments, city managers, foundation leaders, all with a civic interest in addressing two issues. One, how do we as civic leaders respond to the collapse of media? How do we create more informed, engaged citizens and keep people aware of what's happening in our place? And secondly, how do we do this in a way that's going to excite talent and provide tools and information to allow us to better attract and retain talent? So we have very serendipitously grown into a network of cities that look like this. Our work has become very grounded in research out of the Knight Foundation called Soul of the Community. About 9 years ago, the Knight Foundation commissioned Gallup. Gallup is kind of famous for working with big companies to understand the fundamental relationship between how people feel about the place they work and how the company performs in the overall marketplace. Through research, Gallup has identified again and again and again, the better people feel about the place they work, the more engaged they are, the better they talk about that business, the more talent that business attracts, the better that business performs. Knight's question to Gallup was, does that same paradigm exist in a place-based context? So Gallup tweaked its survey tool. They did phone interviews in 21 Knight Foundation cities, and they found, lo and behold, the better people, the more informed people are about what's happening in the community, the more they feel they have agency and a voice in where their city is moving, those people feel better about their place. They talk better about their place, and those communities grow, right? Local media is not helping. This is a recent-ish Bloomberg report that maps the relationship between local media collapse and or local media erosion and the decline in civic infrastructure and attachment to community. There is a direct relationship between a newspaper no longer having a community health reporter and engagement and energy around community health eroding. The relationship between not having an arts and culture reporter and having arts and culture businesses suffer from lack of engagement and erosion, right? This is how that looks like in a city like Detroit. This is the Detroit News. I grabbed this screenshot about 7 years ago because I was really struck. If you look at story 4, 26 were jailed in a Monroe County dogfighting operation. And I was like, wow, that's the 4th most popular story. It was horrific. Then I looked at story 5, and they actually sent a photographer out to cover this bloodbath of a dogfighting operation. I know folks at the News, I said, hey, did you send a photographer out because that story was doing well and getting clicks, which equals revenue? And they said, we did. News and Free Press used to have 370 reporters. There's now under 40 reporters for both publications. Those reporters are under incredible pressure to feed a 24/7 news cycle and to identify stories that are going to drive clicks. Imagine what this paradigm does to productive community reporting. There is no longer environmental reporting. There's no longer community health reporting. There is barely arts and culture reporting. There is no longer youth reporting left in the great city of Detroit. We have come to organize our work around kind of these set of drivers, right? The Knight Foundation research and subsequent iterations of Soul of the Community have identified what are the drivers of attachment to place. What are the things people need to fundamentally understand about their community? This doesn't include sports, right? In order to be engaged and feeling about their place, right? These are also the areas that local media is most disinvesting in. So our work tends to operate on the nexus of reporting on the drivers of attachments and helping support really important community coverage that's disappearing from local newspapers. Please reflect on these because there will be a test on this later in the presentation. I'm just kidding. We also focus very much on solutions. We have become part of a national movement called solutions journalism. A huge paradigm in our reporting is understanding where impact and change is happening and how to constantly report on the people and the organizations that are driving real solutions. So there's a massive solutions orientation to our reporting. We also believe in an NPR paradigm all around the importance of community listening. Our work is all grounded in broad-based, cross-generation, cross-sector groups of advisors. On a quarterly basis, we convene the community, we embed our editors in community, and we use the community to shape a vast, vast majority of our stories. Unintentionally, we're helping to support, I think, a really important emerging paradigm around the power of community storytelling. We think it's incredibly important that communities and community voices start to shape media. We're finding as we publish stories, as informed by the community feels like they're part of what we're doing. They're more apt to share, they're more apt to publish the stories. We receive a tremendous amount of energy around the community participating in the stories, and also becoming a really effective vehicle for amplifying those stories and getting those stories out to important networks. This is what an actual community listening session looks like. I think this was in Detroit, don't quote me. Our work is very grounded in talent. This is my favorite quote from the publisher of Forbes. In essence, if you want to understand where robust economic growth is going to happen, watch where brains and mobile brains tend to move. A huge part of our work is to map out what we call catalytic talent in places. This is a look at the community of folks we've been tracking and following and reporting on in Detroit over the last 15 years. So as a big part of our advisory group constructs, we are constantly asking who are remarkable people regarding remarkable work. We are finding that our reporting actually strengthens the work of these people. And we fundamentally believe that the number one asset for attracting talent is being able to show you have a community of talent. So we kind of use this people-focused paradigm to strengthen the work of remarkable people and retain them in a community, and to showcase remarkable people as a mechanism to attract more talent to places. This has been supported by a Next City movement around the importance of sharing stories amongst change makers in communities. To that end, we've developed a survey tool, and Rick, this is kind of new since we last presented. We started to receive an incredible amount of anecdotal evidence from people that we were reporting on saying, hey, you did this story about me and I got a new grant. Or you did this story about me and volunteers showed up. So we have developed a survey tool. Every time we report on a person or organization, when the story is published, they receive a note saying, hey, your story has been published. Please share it and follow us, right? So we use this as a mechanism to make sure the influential people that we're reporting on become core readers. And then 60 days after we publish the story, another survey goes out saying, what happened? How'd you like the story? Did your social media networks grow? Did more volunteers? What happened? So we're starting to develop a research-based kind of body of work that supports the importance of reporting on people as a mechanism to strengthen their work. Has anyone been to Detroit? Anytime recently? This is the Corktown neighborhood of Detroit. And this is a founding change maker in the city by the name of Phil Cooley, who started a barbecue called Slo's Barbecue that became really one of the first destination dining places in Detroit in years and years and years. So this is a story about Phil Cooley standing outside of the building and a block in Corktown that Phil was just starting to do one of the first projects on. Obviously, there's nothing left on this block, right? Our Detroit publication launched about the same time Phil was opening Slo's Barbecue, and Phil developed this really design-oriented little door, and we did a story on that. They expanded their patio. They took all the wood out of the building when they did the renovation, and they repurposed that wood to create this beautiful deck. We did a story on that. And we started to systematically report on this Corktown block over the course of the 10 years. So all of our content that we create is organized around the neighborhood, the issue, the organization, or the industry that it touches. So we really take kind of a more of a transformational approach to reporting. So this is the timeline across the top of this is actually our news reporting out of Corktown over this period of years, and how that news reporting showcased the transformation of this block that now looks like this. So we spent a significant amount of time looking to connect our stories to showcase how neighborhoods, how industries, how issues in a community are transforming and changing over time. All of that leads to our business model. Our contemporary business model is largely grounded in a set of second-tier cities in the older Midwest. We convene community stakeholders that include foundations, cities, county economic development, county tourism, key nonprofit agencies, key foundations. Community foundations are absolutely central to every project that we're doing. Each of these organizations pools some money and receives certain benefits. So all of our funding partners, what we call our coalition of underwriters, receive underwriting. We create a direct relationship between their investment and our ability to expand reporting around the areas that matter to them and us. All of our partners receive branding and advertising. We have tag-based ads, so if an organization is interested in supporting arts and culture, their brand will frame an arts and culture story. If an organization is supporting our work in neighborhoods, their brand will frame our neighborhood coverage. All of our partners receive a license to reuse content, and all of our partners participate and help shape our broader advisory group in the community. Advisory group sessions look like that. So we kick off all of our projects with the formation of a cross-sector, cross-generation, and grassroots to grass tops group of folks. So we'll have civic leaders sitting around a table with artists and entrepreneurs and social innovators to better connect the work happening in grassroots and communities with what's happening kind of in the grass tops, bigger picture stuff, right? This advisory group becomes really fundamental in helping us initially shape what we call our tagging architecture. So with this advisory group, we look at what are the unique assets in a place. What are the neighborhoods and geographies we want to focus on? What are the key industries? What are the emerging trends? How does the community think about the future of mobility? What's happening in the social service sectors? What are the key initiatives in the community? Each of these tags become an important foundation of our editorial roadmap. But one of my frustrations existing in Detroit was, how do I find information about bike culture? Or how do I find information about arts and culture? So if you imagine how outside talent or outside investment is going to want to find information about Middleton, each of these tags become its own microsite. So this is how we are archiving and showcasing assets in the Eastern Market neighborhood of Detroit. So from a neighborhood perspective, this is how we archive our content in support of arts and culture to showcase a vibrant arts and culture scene in Detroit. Here's how we've organized our content around parks, trails, and emerging bike culture in Detroit. Okay, so that tagging architecture allows us to not only support the media narrative, but helps to organize the community's assets in the way that are really important to how outsiders are trying to orientate themselves to your community. That advisory group helps us to form the local brand. This is a look at our Port Huron, Michigan, St. Clair County publication. It came to be known as the Keel. Out of engaging the advisory group, Port Huron was founded as a boat building economy. Boat building economy is the DNA of this community. The Keel is the foundation in way forward, right? So we look to create kind of a unique legacy or DNA of a place and create more of an ambitious, forward-looking, contemporary brand, in this case, the Keel. And that advisory group helps us to shape important stories. We spent a lot of time supporting the work of entrepreneurs, particularly place-based entrepreneurs that are catalysts for how neighborhoods and downtown districts change. I've always been frustrated about hearing about a really exciting project, and then 6 months later, I'm like, what happened to that project? We heavily engage county and city planners on our work to make sure we're regular reporting on transformative projects and, as importantly, milestones around those projects. Young talent is really interested in the duality of being urban and having great urban environments and assets, but quickly being outdoors. I think Middleton has an opportunity to really kind of play into this trend. In Port Huron, we're doing a lot of stories showcasing younger people kayaking to work. We spent a lot of time engaging with boomerangs and or transplants. Right, I think you guys probably have all experienced people new to Middletown, see Middletown in a different way and bring a different sense of energy and excitement to it. People that have never left Middletown are thinking, probably not, nothing's happened here in years, right? So we're constantly trying to tap into that boomerang and transparent narrative. Everyone reported on the massive McLaren Hospital investment. We were looking at what McLaren was doing to actually create job opportunities and uplift the neighborhood where this investment was going to happen. So we took a very different take on this kind of story. This is a look at an environmental story that's connected to a lot of the work we're doing statewide in Michigan right now. This is a quick look at how, when we launch a new project, our methodology for growing an audience, right? In the upper right, you'll see the tactics we do when we launch a new project to engage influencers and essentially build a syndication network of content, grab emails, do press releases, do kickoff events. Below that, you'll see the tactics that we use when we publish a story. So every story, there's a set of things we do to promote individual stories. Below that, you'll see the tools we use to make sure that stakeholders and our advisory group, through alerts, through our RSS feeds, through social media posts, are connected to the content. And to the far left, you'll see kind of the transparent dashboard that we present to our communities on a quarterly basis to make sure that our advisors are very aware of what kinds of stories are performing, where readership is coming from, who is sharing and reusing the content, where is the content being read outside the region and the community. So we've got a set of about 10 metrics, and I will share more about how that works. Once the content is published, this is a look at how we push content out through our national network. So content from Middletown will regularly appearing in our national network of sites. This is our Cleveland site. Now that we have 4 active publications, we are soon to have 5 active publications, including Sandusky, Ohio. In our Ohio network, we've created an Across Ohio object. So Middletown content on a weekly basis will appear in Springfield, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and soon to be Sandusky. And this is a quick look at how a network of our partners are reusing our content. So in the upper right section, you'll see the Right Place, which is a regional economic development entity. Below that, you'll see Grand Rapids Tourism, who is syndicating lifestyle content. Next to that, you'll see how the city is pulling in neighborhood-based content. And above that, you'll see how the Chamber of Commerce is pulling in content related to talent and emerging leadership. So that tagging architecture slide that we shared earlier also becomes a fundamental tool in allowing us to syndicate highly customized content to different organizations. This is what we call our tech stack. We are constantly assembling new tools and new ways to provide insight into transparency into what's happening with the content and the stories. So this is our current set of tools that we use to, on a quarterly basis, share impact. And this is a look at an actual impact report that we share on a quarterly basis with our partners in Bay County, Michigan. So this is a look at high-level trends between 2019 and 2020. Keep in mind, when you look at 2020 annual readerships, Bay City is a community of about 35,000 people. We look at time on page and trends around engagement. We spent a lot of time tracking organic search traffic and how we're having an impact on search SEO. We're constantly looking to build engagement through social media strategies. And we spent a lot of time really trying to understand our impact in the information ecosystem. How many organizations are linking and sharing our content on an annual basis? So much of our analytics are really looking at demonstrating and continuing to advance organizations linking to us, sharing us, and leveraging our content as a tool. Quick look at highlights. You look at open rates, click rates, and quarter-over-quarter sessions. We then share top performing stories in terms of reach and engagement. This is important to get the advisory group starting to kind of think about, okay, what stories are actually resonating and how do we start to shape and create more of these types of stories. This is a look at referring traffic and from a priority perspective where our audience is coming from. All of the highlighted yellow sources of referring traffic are part of the Issue Media Group network, so you start to get a sense of how our existing media sites help to drive traffic to Bay City. We use a tool called CrownTaggle to constantly look at who is, from a social media perspective, sharing the content, and we report this back to the community. Again, that tagging architecture becomes important in our impact on search terms. So this is a look at some of the important search terms that we're having page one impact on. Obviously, our partners are interested in not only energizing the local community, but also starting to build a narrative regionally and nationally about Middletown being an emerging place. So we share geographic origin of readers. And once our publication is established, we've got a number of kind of bolt-on type programs. This is a program that we're doing called On the Ground, where we essentially are training and developing local residents to have a voice in media that attaches to what we're doing. This is a look at a statewide series on trails. We are currently doing a significant amount of work around engaging youth and amplifying youth voice, while starting to create a next generation of youth journalists in communities around a program called Voices of Youth. And this is an example of a foundation-funded project that was designed to provide a voice to nonprofit leaders during kind of COVID times. So it's a good example of kind of the types of projects that we will do once we have more statewide infrastructure and once we develop the brand and an audience. Patrice, anything else you want to add?
Well, Brian, I think you really covered it. I will just say how enthused we would be to work with Middletown, because the experience that we've had with communities that are about the size of Middletown that are satellites to larger markets, where larger markets who have the daily that control the daily, often their product that they're providing to their satellite city is mostly a rehash of their own city with one or two stories specific to that community. And I have great empathy for the reporters for who are assigned to try to cover a satellite city, because there's so much going on and they are allocated so little space. So we're very excited when there's a community, and we are quite aware of a lot of the greats going on in Middletown from our time before in this conversation. So so those are uncovered gems that we're anxious to get our hands on, to tell you the truth. So thank you.
And I will add, in cities like Middletown, I think that the media and that Bloomberg story, and Sharon and Sarah, I'll make sure we share that so you have a chance to read it. But it actually highlights how smaller cities that are in close proximity to larger metros get kind of a double whammy, right? Cincinnati's traditional media no longer has the infrastructure or capacity to cover Middletown unless something horrible happens, right? So now you get the double whammy of no regional capacity to share what's happening in Middletown as a way to get the region to feel differently about Middletown. And then obviously you got the challenge locally of like, how do we keep our citizens and residents informed and engaged about what's happening in our place? Sarah, I'm curious, community foundations are often our lead champion and convener. I think in 5 of our markets, we actually have established funds at community foundations where they become our fiduciary, and all the community members pay into a community foundation fund. I'm curious how you reacted to this.
Yeah, I'm very excited, very familiar with David Bornstein's work on solution journalism. I'm in Indiana. I'm a Hoosier at heart, so I was kind of poking around some of the things you've done in Fort Wayne, and so I'm really open to this idea, and I think that I have a lot of board members who are very interested in economic development, but what that means for our community foundation, I think, is still a conversation that we're having, right? Like, we don't have the resources of the city to spur new businesses, but this feels, to me at least, like something that is much more in a community foundation's wheelhouse. Would certainly be open to, being the fiduciary if that is what makes sense in our context, and thinking about then how we deploy some of our resources in this larger effort. So yeah, so kind of depending on what the next steps are, and Rick, if you're kind of leading the charge here, it would probably make sense to find a time to give a version of this presentation to a subcommittee of mine or of my board, my larger board. But yeah, I'm excited and open to what the possibilities here.
Sharon, any thoughts or observations? Hospitals and anchor institutions are foundational partners in our markets. I tend to think hospitals are very concerned about the fact that there's no more community health reporting left in places, and also have an interest in making sure people understand hospital systems are massive talent attractors, economic drivers, placemakers in communities as well. And I'll share some links with you about our work with Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit as well.
Sure, thank you. I guess I would say we have not seen a real big downturn of healthcare reporting. Now, some of that may be due to the COVID pandemic, but honestly, we've had so much media, it's really kind of incredible. We still have a healthcare contact at the Journal News, as we do in all of our regions where we have hospitals. I will agree that we struggle in getting support from the Cincinnati media market because Atrium is just too far north for them. Unless it's something huge, we do struggle with that. But the Dayton media and the Journal News has been really good partners for us. Rick, this is Sharon. I do have a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Once this meeting is over, what is the takeaway for us? I mean, will we be sent information about the publication, opportunities, when it goes to print, all of that? Is that going to come post this meeting?
Brian, if you can answer that, just kind of share with Sharon the typical progress through this.
Absolutely. Sharon, this is an informational call really to hopefully engage and energize potential funding partners for this project.